Welcome back. I'm Chad. This is the Chad Show Overreactions. This installment's going to be talking about and overreacting to a video called RangeDay with U.S. Marines at Camp Lejeune. And then the details here says elements of the 26th MU Marine Expeditionary Unit from a battalion landing team. That's 1/6. A BLT is a battalion reinforced with attachments from other support entities and units. So, 1st Battalion, 6 Marines. They're conducting the range part of a military operations urban MOUT. They're doing urban training. This is a shooting package. A part of it that's live fire. MOUT is by a large part all either UTM, semi-munitions, or miles gear, or running around yelling "bada bada jam" or "bang bang, you're dead." No, I'm not. This training is on Marine Corps Base, Lejeune, North Carolina. This MOUT training increases lethality of the MU's infantrymen through live fire drills, room clearing procedures, and small team tactics in order to prepare for their upcoming deployment. So this is workups for deployment. This looks like a somewhat recent video. It was uploaded, I believe, I want to say 3 days ago. I saw that on there somewhere. Doesn't matter. You'll know by the weather. It's inclement weather. It is drizzly, rainy, and apparently pretty nasty cold. This is the worst type of weather to be training in my opinion. Yes, snow sucks for its own reasons, but this, if you could stay dry in the snow, you'll be fine. If it's raining, it's impossible to stay dry, and that 40-degree temperature will just suck it right out of you. Anyways, yeah, let's just go over this video here, see what we see. It's a pretty good video. I've watched it a couple times already and decided to go ahead and do the video about it. All right, check my levels and see. We'll start booting up. This is at the ammo table at the back. That's a standard Marine Corps issue plywood range table. They're doing ammo breakout here. Sound will catch up here in a second.
Yeah. Nine boxes apiece.
9 boxes apiece. That's 180 rounds per Marine per shooter.
Can you
There's
go ahead
20
and
round
break
boxes. That's the class instructor running the line.
All right, that first relay. Deliberate load.
Deliberate load. So they're administratively going through the process, eyeballing the gun, eyeballing their way through the loading sequence, making sure everything's loaded, working properly, obviously. Now they're getting into zeroing. I just want to point out here, this is slow fire zeroing, or zero confirmation. It looks like they're at about 50 yards, but they might not be. We don't see the target in relation to these shooters. This is the M27 or the other variant H&K rifle based off the 416. Now, go back here a second or two as he's getting in position here. And I want you to see a couple things. I just want to point it out what right looks like. Okay. He was slightly bladed standing. He took a step back with his non-firing or his support side left leg to get his legs square to the target line. And he is now squatting into a double knee kneeling position. Both legs down, boom. Just like it's a good controlled method to get to the ground. It's very stable while shooting, but keep in mind they're wearing full kit. All the way to the plates. They're the apparent hydration system on the back with whatever else is in there, helmet, and a heavy-ass rifle. So controlling your descent's a good idea. You just don't want to slam to your knees or whatnot. You want to maintain control so it doesn't turn into a highlight reel. He arrests his descent with his non-firing hand. Now, where we taught was instead of going open palm down, use a fist to protect the palms of your hands in case you're not wearing gloves, or if you are wearing gloves, but you're in a crisis site, in combat, whatever, a lot of stuff's blown up, you're out in the middle of nowhere, you're putting your open palm down, there'd be broken glass, rubble, shards of steel, and frag. You want to protect the palms of your hands if at all possible. I know it sounds kind of pearl clutchy, but once you get a cut across your hand, everything becomes infinitely harder. And that's an unforced error if you can do that. But he went palms down. Like I said, this is on their own. They deliberately loaded. They're just going to zero. Just point out his positioning and how he gets into the prone. Now as it catches up to me here, watch what he does with the bipod. He loads it, putting weight into the rifle. He's square behind the gun. Body line behind the gun. That center line of rifle goes completely through his upper body and out his butt cheek. Good shot. All the way through the follow through and reset. One more again. I want y'all to understand that this is slow fire. You heard that click? Disconnect or reset. I I know a lot of people get worked up about pinning the trigger to the rear till the sight's settled, then resetting it deliberately. That's a different part of shooting. I know shooting is shooting, but this is slow fire. He's just making sure he's paying attention to every step through the firing cycle. He's closing out his shot loop or his firing cycle at disconnect or reset. He recovered back to his sights, then reset the trigger, then put it back on safe and got off the gun. Now you see him running down to the target line because that's what Marines do. While they're active duty, we don't do that when we get out. Yeah, the white tape is not a Russian. Not a Russian. He's range staff and instructor.
4 times, just like those.
Now listen here.
When you get back again, take your time, and from there you should use the middle reticle to make the proper correction.
So these are non-zeroing targets, obviously. These are some bullseye target. And I believe those are actual pistol targets. They're not great. They're not great. But for what it is, it gives you acceptable accuracy size for shot groups. It gives you a point of aim. Aim at the center at the X and adjust off of it. Now, his specific directives that he just gave his shooter, his pointer, was utilize the reticle subtensions to establish his offset. So there's no grid pattern like a standard zeroing target, 25 or 30, whatever zeroing target. There's no grid pattern on there to sit there and count out how many clicks you need to adjust your shots, right? He's telling him to use his reticle. So he's going to either hold center at his initial point of aim, the X, and then use your reticle to count down and over to see how much adjustment he needs to put into the scope to correct his deviation or the printing of the rifle back to his intended point of aim. So he has point of aim, point of impact. Now, at this distance, if this is less than 100 yards, they should be considering sight offset, meaning he needs to be doing 100 yard zero in this optic, and it should, if it's 50 yards, it should be 1/2 or in the middle of that sight height, center of bore. If you have an optic that is strong enough, you can do that without walking down range. If you can see your shot, you can make your adjustments. They're using medical tape here, it looks like, to mask their white targets, which is smart. I use it too on white targets. Here we go. Body stance and positioning. He started out with his feet staggered. You can see over my shoulder, you see his war belt. You see how he's kind of opened up a little bit. His shoulders are pretty well on line. Now, this is starting out first part of the day, and they are fresh shooters, right? So he started out at a compressed low ready, or almost indoor ready, or rifles rolled inboard. Rolled the gun up as he leaned into the gun to bring it up. Now, I could tell his rifle is on or outside of his straps by the angle of his head. He's leaning his head over to the gun. Ideally, be squared up enough with that rifle buttstock inside the strap to where when he presents the gun, it's underneath the dominant eye, the shooting eye, not out here that you have to crane your head over to it. But keep your head up as much as possible, maximize your field of view, and bring it straight up underneath your dominant eye as you get into the gun or lean into the gun. Get into that a little bit more without try not to get into the weeds too much here, but these guys are doing good work. I just want you to understand a couple of things. They're doing this in full kit in the rain. Now, this Cordura is not water repellent. It is neutrally buoyant in the water without plates and magazines. And, well, soft armor, it should be, I guess. So it should float where it's at in the water. Whatever depth it ends up at, it'll stay there, basically. And then you add the other weight and it'll sink like a rock. But it's not water repellent, so it adds weight as it gets wet. And so that all starts to drag. It's a whole inertia thing or entropy thing. It starts dragging you out throughout the day, and you start feeling it. And you're hefting around these big ass rifles with suppressors and optics and stuff. It starts getting on you a bit. Sorry for the buffering.
Same drill, shooter, stand by.
This is going from that indoor ready, which they're cheating the indoor ready. It's supposed to be down by your side. So it's kind of in between indoor ready, but he's rolling the gun up and down. So the rifle, the stock, is starting out outside his kit, and it stops where it stops, and it gets higher and further outboard of his kit and from his center line of body. And the further out it gets, higher and out, the harder, I don't say the harder, but the more leverage the gun has against you under recoil as you're firing. And the faster you shoot, the greater the effect of that recoil, because you're not giving yourself full time to recover, or it's just slowing you down. All that gas is coming back out of the chamber. It's a piston gun. Other thing I want you to watch for is how much that gun jumps in his hands. Couching the gun under his elbow to take it away. Pretty decent reload.
Go ahead and set up that same drill.
But there's a lot of hand jive going on, all right? A lot of hand jive.
Go ahead and set up that same drill.
Do it!
All right. Notice how this gun is not parked in his shoulder. It's not couched. The buttstock should ideally be along his forearm or chicken winged or couched under his arm, under his bicep to take the weight off it. So it's not floating. As that gun's floating in space, the angle required for insertion of the magazine changes. You can see here how he's trying to line up where that magazine's at in space as the gun's moving, and it just slows you down. It can cause you to fumble it. But also, all that strain is cranking against your wrist. He's had to break his wrist. It's already pried the gun halfway out of his hand, right? He's got a big old LA5 on the muzzle. I think he's got a suppressor on that one too. That's all mass out at the end of a lever arm in front of him, working against him on a 7-pound carbine, naked 7-pound carbine. If he couches it back here, the gun stays in place. He can get that magazine sourced and in. And you can't see it here, but I see it on other guys. The way they're retrieving the magazines, they're holding them by the base of the magazine and not with a beer can grip. And the problem is that you don't have good dexterity like that. You just don't. You don't have good control over the magazine either. Now, I give it to him. What he's doing is he's trying to game it. And he couches it, keeps it in location. Much better magazine. That M4 is floating around. It's a better run for him. The second his support hand comes off the gun, you'll see the muzzle start floating. That's a nice rip. My only note for him. See, he's slipping the stock over his shoulder, drawing that long ass gun into his body, and that's what you have to do with a long rifle. And these are long rifles, especially with those cans. He's slipping it over his shoulder. Probably 23 3/4 hours of the day that these dudes are carrying their long guns, they're holding it like this, or some variation thereof. They got their hands and their arms in tight to their center of gravity. And they got the gun kind of balanced in space in front of them to take a lot of that leverage out of it so they can hang on to it all day. So they're saving energy while they're retaining the gun and transporting it and holding it. But the second it's time to go to work, they're snapping it out there and locking it on the gun. Now, where shooters in general, these Marines specifically, what my guidance to them would be, fine, if that's how you carry your gun, that's how you carry your gun. I'll carry my gun like that too. Or rifle. Sorry, I know their skin's curling when they hear me. An old jarhead call it a gun, but I'm a gunsmith. They're guns. It's when you flip that switch and you go from yellow to orange, orange to red, where I have caused a fire. You have to flip that switch mentally and get in the fight. And the problem is, and I see it with a lot of shooters, and you could see a little bit with some of these shooters on the line, is that they stand one way, they lift the gun up, especially with those little M4s. They just throw it up there, boom, boom, and they're just going off a muscle, boom, 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 firing the gun, but the gun's getting free motion in free space to bounce around a whole lot more. Now, these 416s are hella reliable because they're piston guns. They will cycle in free space more regularly and dependably than an M4. The more you have shot it, the more the lube's burned off, the less lube you have on it to start with, whatever. You got gunk in the gun. You're shooting with suppressors, which truncates the life of all that stuff, all that lubrication. Like immediately first shot, it's jacked up. Well, your reliability thresholds dwindle quickly. And the faster, the higher ferocity that you put out rounds, your window for reliable service starts shrinking, right? Because friction, drag, fouling, all of that comes into play. And then if you remove recoil abatement at the shoulder, it is 100% possible. I can replicate it on a range. In fact, I developed a diagnostic live fire test to check for gassing on rifles to make sure they are properly gassed. To remove that recoil abatement at the shoulder, I'm shooting it out in free space. It's just like limp wrist in a handgun. You can limp wrist a rifle. And a fouled M4 Mark 18, you can steal enough inertia off that bolt carrier. It's like catching an egg in egg toss. You're not trying to catch the egg. in this game of egg toss, the egg is the bolt carrier. Your hand hits you against the rifle, and that egg, that recoil impulse hits your hand, the egg should break and your hand shouldn't move. If you're trying to cradle the egg, if you're stealing inertia off of that bolt, it's not going to get full compression of that spring, the action spring or buffer spring. It's not going to get full compression, and it's going to have a weaker throw forward, and it's already heavily fouled and dry and whatnot. The magazine might be gross too because it's blowing gases down in through the feed lips of the magazine well. All those things are working against you. So if you're sloppy on the gun and the gun's slipping around your shoulder, or if it's just you're holding it out in free space, sooner than later, you're going to get a short cycling. And then it's going to be the big debate of too many rounds in your magazine or some other BS. And like, no, dude, you were soft on your gun. Your lube burned off or flew off the gun, and you're just running too weak on the gun. And it will happen. It will happen. I bet I can make a 416 do it eventually. It'll take a lot longer to get there at the 416. It takes a lot longer to get there with LWRCs, especially if I have a regulator on the wrong position, or if I have a wrong actual buffer in the gun and it's suppressed or whatnot. Anyways, that's a rabbit trail, but it's important. There's more than just being fast on the gun and shooting tight groups up close, which is extremely important, but there's more to it than that. When it comes down to your gun going bang when you need it to. Like you said, that one dude didn't have a proper load on his gun. He's walking forward. He goes, click, and then he had to fix the gun with immediate actions. Then he got in there, and now he had to earn some of his honor back, and he just starts going probably a little bit faster and started making other sacrifices he probably didn't need to make. You need to be working that cover properly instead of just shooting fast on all the targets, trying to save some pride. But I get it. We all do that. That's just one iteration. I'm not judging it, dude. Just it's a point of reference. It's a learning point. We should be doing things in a proper sequence, a proper way, not because I'm anal retentive. I'm not at all. But when it comes down to this stuff, a lot of people have learned lessons. And this guy specifically here, I can tell you what, man, his highway patrol mustache is legit, dude. I'm kind of digging it on the guy. He's quick on getting the gun out and getting his shots off, but it's not an on-off toggle switch. It's a dimmer switch, right? So he's quick on it, but he doesn't be so quick out of the fight. He needs to take a second and assess his shots on target, through the optic, off the optic, and get his scans in, right? I know a lot of people are like, oh, you don't need to do all that. Dude, you do. Especially these guys. These guys do. They don't get a whole lot of time on the range to train this stuff. Whenever you aim, the cacophony, the violence of actually shooting, you need to be doing that too, because you don't get a whole lot of reps on doing this all the time. This is their one mount package for this deployment that could land them in some hotspot somewhere where they don't get to do a whole lot of reps, maybe on the flight deck or on an elevator, depending on what ship they're on. They need to get the right reps in. Crawl, walk, run, slow, smooth, fast, all those axioms. I'm not ascribing hate to any of them, but there's a reason why you need to learn the steps first, work on smoothing out that choreography and practicing it until it becomes habit. Perfect practice makes perfect, right? Varying degree of that because of inertia or entropy. It's always working against us. So we need to worry about getting it right. I have a good friend that's in a wheelchair and has been for a long time because of range protocols in the Marine Corps, which weren't these at all, but it was along these lines of got my shots off, worrying about stupid stuff that does not translate to combat. And by the time he was fishing the fresh magazine out, he took one through his spine. And Paul Gardner, he'll tell you. So I doubt this guy's going to hear this, and I'm not preaching at him. I'm using him as an example of, yeah, this dude's good. He squared away. I can see that. That's my only point for him, really. A little tighter on the gun. Keep it in tighter to center line, and don't be so quick off of it. You just had cause to shoot this dude 300 times, right? He might need a few more. He might have changed of mind. He might have only crouched out of fear. You might have just scared him, or you might have had underperforming ammunition, which can happen. Or you might just decide, hey, today's the day, and start coming back at you again. So stay in it. Don't be so quick to stay out. Now, there are times where you get your shots off, suck the gun in and move. Yeah, but you're just standing here doing presentations. I'm not saying do that if you're having to shoot and scoot, or if you're moving through the house. I'm not saying to do that every time. But if you are engaging an enemy right there, finish that fight. Or if you engage him and have to go to a secondary threat and engage him, you should come back and get eyes on. You got to stay in it. It's none of this switching off and move off to somewhere else without getting eyes on everything and making sure the fight's over before you say it's clear. We'll see another rep out of this guy. I'm sorry to rant. No, I'm not.
Same drill. Stand by.
See, he's in the moment. Just that dimmer switch, man. Just that dimmer switch. He's really quick getting the gun out. It's a bayonet strike out and back into the shoulder. That's fine. It's after that. Just cut it back to 50% speed. Work your way back quickly, smoothly, but give yourself that time to process what you just did without dwelling on it. Don't get frozen by it, but just don't snatch the gun out of the fight. You could have shot till he left. You're in a magnet. That's another thing. You're low powered variable optic. So you're 1 power. Boom. He falls out of your tube and you got nothing but weapon in front of you and you got a bunch of smoke going past you. Boom. He falls out of your scope. You don't even track him to the ground. Like I said, I shot until he disappeared out of my scope. Did he move? Did he crouch behind cover? Now granted, you're going to see a lot. You're going to see the fingers pushing into his shirt, but yeah. Dimmer switch, open it back up, get your essay back as quickly as possible. Don't be in a rush to snatch the gun out of the fight. Nice mustache. Got a nice helmet too. I don't know if this is what they're giving to line units or not.
Same drill.
I love that setup on the M4. So he's going from high ready, pushing out, snapping it back in. I'll let his coach work on him. Might be the first time some of these guys have ever had to do this type of shooting before. There you go. Now he's doing it better. See how high that rifle is above his shoulder? He's controlling the gun really well. But I think the reason why it's sitting so flat for him and why he's getting away with it is because he got an LA5 on there. The LaRue Harris 6-9 swivel bipod with a can on an already heavy HK416 with a slightly longer barrel. So that's a lot of weight out front. That gun's not going to move on you much. So he's getting away with that. But if he has to get on the gas on somebody, you'll probably watch him change his position to start doing it. And that's not ideal. If you're already in that position for maximum recoil abatement and control the gun, it doesn't matter the shot speed delivery. You can on the pedal, off the pedal, dimmer switch, whatever ism you want to use. You're not having to change how you hold the gun and mount the gun to go from one to the next. Now these guys are learning. So I hope this doesn't come across as unbashful. I'm not. Their coaches are working on them. I'm sure they're telling him a lot of this. Like he's got his muzzle way through this doorway. He doesn't own it. He needs to be backed off of that guy. But they're learning this stuff. So let it right. He'll remember that. Brains love to press that switch, man. See how he's kind of bladed? That stock is on his deltoid. It's a lot harder to control that gun. Okay. You just see that? So this is not a dump X. This is what we would call body stance positioning check. We're using full auto to describe it. I keep talking about rapid strings of fire and firing under recoil still, or within your recoil recovery cycle. By shooting on full auto in controlled burst, it forces you into that window, that threshold of quickly too, of, oh, I got to fix myself because it's shoving me around, and it will force you to make changes. If you watch this cat right here, this shooter right here, watch his right leg or his trailing leg from this perspective. Back it up a little bit. We use this quite a bit in our classes. Watch his leg. Oop. So he fixed himself to hold on to it. Your body kind of knows what to do.
Shooters from the low ready. Stand by. Threat.
See how he's fixing himself? That's it. Okay. Catch this guy again. See if y'all can pick out here what's happening here. That's a cool shot right there. Poof, like he's shooting black powder. Can't help but grin. Look at this dude. All right, here we go. See how it's shoving him off? Your center line, the body of your spinal column, right? That's the center point. That's your axis, center axis of your body. From at your sternum to the shooting pocket or wherever your point of engagement is, that is a lever arm that the rifle has to work against you. You know, that recoil impulse slams into you if you have it in free space, or if it's just against you, you're not holding it tight, or if you're just shooting long strings either rapidly in semi-auto or control burst and full auto, the more times it can push before you can muscle it back on a target, it's going to shove you off. It's going to twist you on the X axis. And as the higher it is above your shoulder, the more it has against you to lift you up or lift the muzzle up or straighten you up. So if you're not in that aggressive fighting stance, shoulders forward of your hips, toes grabbing at the ground slightly, hold it tight, close to center line as possible. It should tend to end up below your dominant eye as you're standing there, lifting the gun. You're just rolling into the gun, and that sight should be coming up into your eyes as you're smearing at the stock, right? Excuse me. His is outside, and he's got the stock collapsed all the way with a magnified optic. So he's having to turtle his head back just to be able to see through that. And it's not a very forgiving scope. That VCOG's not that forgiving to as far as eye box is concerned. So he needs to have that stock actually extended. Either he doesn't normally run it that way, or he just neglected to extend it. But it changes things real quick. If he had it out 2 more positions, had the stock, the rifle mounted more underneath his dominant eye, he'd have much better control. He does a good job, but he's having to put a whole lot more muscle into it because his body alignment's off. And this is just hard on your neck. Here we go again. He was tight on the gun. He was tight on the gun. You could see it kind of straightening him up a little bit, but his upper body was still in that same position. It was just rocking him back a bit. That tells me he could have been a bit more aggressive behind the gun, physically aggressive, so that he wouldn't have as much give. He wouldn't straighten up as much. Here we have an M4 with a can on it. It looks like a Knight. Yeah, it's a Knight's can. It looks like, so he's like nose to charging handle with an ACOG. That's the way that ACOG's made to be. Because it was set up for the M16, but you got an M4, dude. You got a class of stock. I mean, you could have run that stock out a little bit further and gotten the gun out in front of you more, and I have to crane his head over to see through it. This guy's very vertical right here. He didn't start out that vertical. You can see it pushed him up, right? But he kept the muzzle level. That's okay. He held his hits on target. Drive that hip forward, square up his hips more. He's got the toe closed off. Good, good, good. A lot of these guys are doing the right thing. They've had some good coaching. These guys are just getting their reps in. It's an experience. They understand what the gun's doing against them now and what it's trying to do to them. And they're firsthand, not even thinking about it. They're having to make these physical adjustments. Then a good coach or instructor comes along and says, all right, hey, put your hand here. Hey, extend this, push the shoulder forward. See how that M4 is just bouncing back? Get squared up more. You could have dumped the whole mag into it. Now, I know I've been talking about all this shooting and stuff. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I to say all this madness? Well, hi, I'm Chad. This is a Chad show where I get to talk. Now, seriously, on that note, we as shooters, we have opportunities to improve on what we do. And within that, as I'm pulling up this next video, who am I? I am a firearms instructor. I did it for a long time. I've been on the DL for a couple of years now, awaiting surgery. VA takes forever. Had to move. Moved away from my training company. So I haven't really gotten back into it. So that's why I'm doing this here. Keeping one toe in it somehow, trying to at least give back something, right? But I was training Marines at times for diplomatic security. I was training diplomatic security agents and contractors, along with a bunch of other good dudes. I worked with some of the best shooters on the planet on staff. And we did a lot of shooting and a lot of figuring things out. We didn't author things. We didn't say, oh, we discovered this. We might have figured out some things, but somebody else probably figured it out too. We tried to establish best practices for us and our people and push them out to people. We did a lot of shooting, and we fired at the SOCOM schedule for parts replacements on Mark 18s and M4s. We shot a lot. I was maintaining them as a gunsmith for the agency first for a couple of years, almost 3 years. And then contracting change happened, and I went on over to FTU and became a firearms instructor and fell in love with it. But as a grunt in the Marine Corps, I was in a Raider unit in the company, not MARSOC. I'm old. MARSOC was a pipe dream, dude. But I worked with some giants. The reason why I've been on the DL for surgery is because repetitive stress, both hands and elbows, from shooting so much. So here I have a little bit of me shooting, because people tend to think that you don't know what you're talking about if you don't show a highlight reel or tell everybody you're a Grand Dragon or something ridiculous. I guess shoot some course of fire and do well at it, and people will finally listen to me. I'm not taking away from any of those guys. I'm not. I've just been training shooters for a long time, and I've been an end user too. So this is an intro for my other channel, Me Theory. Check it out. I get into different stuff there. I just have fun with it. And so there's a little montage video I did for that intro. And in this video, you'll see me shooting. And I'll point it out to you what's going on here. Musical pickup. Every round fired you hear is me shooting. 249. That gun shoving me around. This is a Scar Heavy 7.62 in full auto. It shoved me back, but I kept it on target. Those are actually all on Quantico. Here's a little leg for you. So.
All right, I'm up. All right, okay, don't fall over.
I can like shoot and stuff sometimes. I got another one here I was going to show. Where'd it go? Oh yeah, here it is. Here's the outro I made. I got some more clips of me shooting in it. Once again, everything you hear is me shooting. So you can guess what gun this is. Yeah, like, follow, share if you feel like it. Where I get into more shooting here in a second. That's me on point. Put a center peel. Mark 18, control burst on steel at 150 yards. Yeah, ding 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 at 150 yards. G40 Bravo on a Bearcat, but free gunning it. The vehicle down trail, so we're bounding vehicle. Vehicle, that's me right there. Up front. RP2s. Lateral field, basically. Lots of bangs, lots of clangs. Anyways, folks, thanks for your time. Like I said, this is nothing against or nothing on the Marines in that video. Best luck to them. They're living their best lives, hopefully. Good on them for getting that training. Hopefully you got the most out of it. Hopefully y'all learned a little bit here. You guys able to point some things out, make you all better shooters. And also, cut them some grace, man. Some of these guys have not had a chance, or this is their first evolution. They're a little scared of screwing up. And you got to screw up some in order to learn. So, until next time, I'm Chad. This is a Chad Show OverReactions. Thanks, and I'll see y'all next time. Deuces.